Disclaimer. To the Pharisees and Karens out there.
How dare you!
All guests on this show do not reflect the opinions of the host. The purpose of this show is to have interesting conversations, stretch our minds, and grow.
Not what we want!
If you are looking for an echo chamber, viewer and listener discretion
is advised.
You talk about extreme.
What is happening and what is up? Hold out your glass, because we're about to fill it up.
Torches high.
You know, look at it from a different perspective.
Hey guys, what is happening and what is up? Hold out your glass, because we are about to fill it up. Welcome to the Prometheus Lens Podcast, the place where the conversations are always enlightening. I'm your host, Doc Brown, and here we like to use the allegory of the Prometheus lens to take a second look at everything. Well, hey guys, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the hero's journey. Be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Be sure to check out our banner down below with all of our social media platforms. That'd be much, much appreciated. Well, hey guys, I got just a banger lined up for you guys today. I got two really great guests. I've been following them for a while. One of these guests you've seen on the show already, but we have a new face. Hopefully this is the first of many. But let me introduce these guys. First, I'd like to welcome back to the show Brian from Demon Erasers. Brian, thank you for joining us again, brother.
Thanks, of course. Thanks for having me back, and be fun to talk about some more crazy stuff.
Yeah. And you want to introduce your tag team partner? I see you guys working together all the time.
Yeah. So this is my buddy JT follows JC. Here he is, Mr. Joe himself.
How's it going, family? Nice to finally meet you, Doc.
Yeah, you too, brother. Like I said, I've followed both of your stuff for a while, and I was really excited to sit down and get you both together. So I was really excited, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, this will be fun.
Yeah.
Well, I talked with Brian a little bit already, so I guess with you, JT, just kind of give us a little introduction. You know, who you are, what you do, how did you get into the content creation game, and how did you get hooked up with this guy?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I feel like I'm the generation of 2020. You know, who woke up during all the craziness of the pandemic, the election, and all that kind of stuff. And through that journey, I was going through crises in my own life. And I really had to kind of just dig down to what is true at this point, because I know that there's a lot of lies out there. And that was a time where I was really putting my faith in God, just because that was the only thing that could get me through that kind of stuff. And then through that, I was reading my Bible, and then I was going down the rabbit hole. And so eventually I started making little videos and got on TikTok, and before you know it, a couple of them went viral. And before you know it, I'm making videos, without even, that was never my goal to go viral and to be famous on social media or anything like that. But it just so happened. And then, through TikTok, Brian and I eventually connected. He liked my videos, liked his, and I was and then Brian was I think God wants us to do something together. And so we became fast friends, and eventually worked on a movie called Ancient Angels. We were, we see eye to eye on so many things. We're different, but we're kind of the same. And through that, God used us to make a documentary, kind of combating the idea of ancient aliens. It's a kind of more true to the story. I kind of like that show, but knowing it was kind of stupid also. But so we tried to be more faithful to the mythologies, and obviously with a biblical worldview, we made that documentary. And of course, since then, we've only done more of that and done countless podcasts together at this point, and just collaborations. And that's pretty much it. Is that Brian and I are both Bible believing Christians, born again Christians, but we're also, I don't shy away from being conspiracy theorists, because I like the conspiracy. I think it's fun, and I think it's good to kind of have a person who does trust the Bible. So you're not black-pilled by all the conspiracies, but you're more okay, this all leads us together to an ultimate truth, which we believe is Jesus Christ.
That's the ultimate conspiracy, is Jesus Christ. Is literally seems to be the path that all other conspiracies are kind of leading away from, or trying to veer you off. So it's great to have JT like when we're working together, because we're both of that same understanding that like the ultimate conspiracy is Jesus. It all points to him.
Yeah, man. And one thing, I was talking with John Pounders from Now You See TV the other day, and I'm actually going to his conference up in Kentucky in August. And he said, I got into conspiracy theories, he said, with a biblical view. He said, because I believe that it was the most fertile ground. He said, because people that are into conspiracies, he said, are automatically, their ground's going to be more fertile because they're looking for answers. They're seeking. He said, no, I found that I've had really good success. He said, with reaching out to people and putting that seed of Christ in the quote unquote conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, that's actually amazing. I would say that I've never heard it put quite like that, but I guess that's what I felt too, is that because, you know, like everybody's testimony is different, but I think that a lot of us they're similar enough where that when I was watching that show, Ancient Aliens, I liked it. I liked the mystery of it. You know, I liked to, so if I don't really believe in aliens like came down and did this, I still have to wrestle with the idea, how was it done? And then when they expose how idiotic the narrative is about how they did it, like, you know, it's not that. So like, again, I don't believe aliens and I don't believe this, but at some point, like as a Christian, you're like, this is really it's kind of troubling to not know exactly what this all means. But at the same time, so I'm one of many. And of course, you know, I believe that God showed me what was true, but I imagine there's many other people who are asking those exact same questions as me. And then they might go find another person to give them answers. So I think for us as Christians, that sometimes people like ask, like me and Brian, like, why don't you just stick to the gospel? Why don't you just talk about this? It's because this is how you find, you know, like you connect with the lost people who are just looking for the truth. And they want answers. It's kind of like even like a lot of people who do content about cryptids, Bigfoot shows. You know, if everybody's ever seen the shows like the Discovery Channel or whatever, and it's always like these monster stories, and they're going to go find this trail, and you know, there's no answers at the end of it. It's just kind of like, well, that was spooky. But if you find somebody who can actually explain what it is, like that, finally, it's like, okay, I want these things in my worldview, the mysteries, I want them to fit together, and we might not ever figure it out totally, but if we can kind of build a framework of like, okay, so this is what's true, we can kind of throw some of these things out, and then we can kind of build upon that. But I think that's absolutely 100% what I've experienced, is that people like conspiracies because they don't like being lied to and they want to know what's true. So if we can point them towards what's true, you know, I believe that ultimately leads to Jesus. And I think I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and also to connect with what you said, you know, talking about cryptids, I'm that crazy Christian that connects it all back to the Bible. I actually wrote my first book about it this year, the Epic of Esau, the birthright and seed war, the hairy Sasquatch guy from Genesis 25:25. First one come out red, covered in hair from head to toe, like a hairy cloak.
That's awesome. That's really cool because a lot of people, like, you know, the funny thing is with my channel on TikTok, I don't even, like, people are like, you need to talk more about Jesus. I'm like, bro, I'm not preaching to Christians. Like, what do you want? Like, what do you want? Like I'm going to tell you the truth about what's going on in the world, you know? And it's like, I don't need to preach to Christians. Like, what do you want to hear? Itching ears? Like, what do you want? Like, you know, like, we're talking about the reality of what's going on in the world and the conspiracies and the things that are unusual. And it's funny because there's a lot of narratives, and there's a lot, like, people can be like, Bigfoot could be an alien. It could be a mutated humanoid thing, or a product of evolution. It's like, bro, he could be all those things. Sure, whatever. But you know what's consistent is when it all lines up with one narrative in the Bible, and it lines up with the stories of the Nephilim, which is what we talk about. And when you understand the stories of the Nephilim, bro, all of it just goes like click, 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 and it just falls into place. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is what this is. And it's the same. It's like, dude, it's so clear. Same thing with the stuff that we talk about with the little season, I think, as well. It's the same kind of like pieces like start clicking, and you're like, oh man, this makes so much sense.
Well, that's a good innuendo because that's one of the things I definitely wanted to talk about with you guys since I got you both on. That this is kind of your guys' lane. I'd definitely like to touch on the little season and like some old world Tartaria kind of stuff because that's something that I've not covered on the show yet, and I think you boys would be hand in glove with those two subjects.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
talked about it a little bit lately.
Just a little bit.
The last year, I've probably been on I don't know how many podcasts explaining this. So yeah, we've talked about this a lot, and of course, it's kind of funny how it's similar but different than the ancient aliens thing. Is that it kind of centers around buildings, right? So I think that's kind of like if you watch Ancient Aliens, that was my favorite part of the show was you have these megaliths, and there's just so much mystery around it. So how did they do this? When did they do this? Why did they do this? It's all those kind of questions, and the thing that's sitting right under all our noses is that you go to any city that's got any age to it in America and pretty much any city all around the world. And then you have these Greco-Roman structures and cathedrals and all kinds of things like that. And you're like, it's sort of weird that these things were all built supposedly around the exact same time. And we don't build anything like this anymore. And we're told that they were way more primitive than us. But why are their buildings so much more impressive than things we build today? It's exactly the same. It's like there's stone, but so it's not quite like megalithic blocks, but they are still, I mean, gosh, you go to these state capitol buildings, courthouses, old post offices and things like that. The columns are like 6 foot in diameter and they're 36 feet tall. The doors are 20 feet tall. And you're like, why don't we build things like that today? So I think that it's almost the same way that I'm like, well, if the Bible's saying that Jesus ascends to heaven in the first century, and then we're waiting for the book of Revelation to start. So what we're kind of taught is that the gospel spreads, and then eventually everything is supposed to go backwards kind of the rest of the way until the end when God needs to judge this place. But it sort of seems like somewhere in that period of time, there was a really good time because they built amazing buildings, Greco-Roman structures, cathedrals, statues. They created great art and all these kind of things. And we're told that was a dark age. So as a Christian, you're just like, what am I supposed to do with that? And then when you get into like the really weird stuff about like the mud flood, like not only are these buildings weird, they look half buried, lots of them.
A lot of destruction.
There's like these, if you go find any old building in your cities, I almost guarantee you're gonna see windows either right at the ground level or below the ground level where they're literally gonna have to build out wells to box around where the windows were. And they'll try to say they're basements, but you can clearly tell they're not basements. They were never intended to be basements, at least. There's these because a lot of times they go multiple stories under the ground, and lots of these old buildings, they're connected with tunnels. So that's the kind of thing, like especially when you go look in America, the timelines of these cities, if you go anywhere out west, these cities are only like 150 years old. It's amazing, like that all the things that they supposedly did right when these settlers got out there, right when these miners went out there. They went out to the West Coast, and not only were they looking for gold, they started building full cities.
Cowboys fighting Indians and building mega structures.
And I think that's really where it's like, so what does all that mean? It just means that when you start asking questions about our history and the narrative, you'll find out it does not make sense. So it seems like they're lying to us. And then, so what are they lying about? Well, I think that they're lying about the biggest thing that could ever happen is that we are past the return of Christ, and we're living in the time where there is this deceptive period. We're past the millennial reign, the 1,000 years. Satan is let loose, and he's set out to deceive the nations. And I feel like that if you've done any kind of research, what we've been doing as a Christian or just a conspiracy theorist in general, people don't even know what shape the earth is anymore. We used to all think it was the same shape, but everything that we were taught in schools at this point needs to be revisited because it seems like we've been lied to about everything. So could we be living in that time that the Bible mentions in Revelation chapter 20 that the devil deceives all the nations?
Yeah.
That's kind of the gist of it.
And there's more things than just the buildings. I mean, like there's historical accounts and writings about the things of the events of Revelation having taken place throughout history. In fact, if you look right now, you can see the moon, and if it's in low in horizon, you'll notice that it looks red. Remember in Revelation, it talks about the moon turning blood red. Well, that's because of the pollution that has subsided down, that the moon has actually faded back to a more yellowish tone. But if we went back just a few hundred years, I almost guarantee you the moon would be red. And like there's so much evidence relating to this because of the pollution, and there was also a volcano. And in 536 AD, supposedly, again, we can't guarantee it, but the dates, because the dates have been messed with and they don't align with all the other dates in the other calendars and everything. But in 536 AD, there was a year and a half of darkness, utter darkness. The sun stopped shining. Likely due to a volcano, which would have put volcanic ash in the atmosphere, which would have created more pollution, which would have turned the moon blood red. It would have made the moon blood red, and it would have made the sun stop shining. And we have evidence of these things, like all over the earth. And like there's a layer of volcanic. There's a layer of not ash. What is that called? Compost.
It's dark earth.
Dark earth.
Yeah,
throughout the whole earth. Terra preta is what they called it. It's literally from an atmosphere of burned without oxygen that it could only exist. So like our atmosphere was drastically evolved, and it's like, where are all the Zeus worshipers today, guys? Why are all the temples destroyed? Where are all the Zeus worshipers? Where's the Zoroastrianism worshipers? Where's the Babylon worshers? Where's the Dagon worshipers?
They're in Israel, Brian.
Yeah, we know that. But the reality is the typical thing. Why are all the temples destroyed? Why are all the major temples of the old gods destroyed? How come that nobody decided to renovate those temples until now? We just thought, oh, we'll just leave that elaborate structure just kind of like buried over there. We'll just ignore it over there. Like, bro, if I found a temple to Zeus and I lived back then like 200 years and it was empty, I'd be like, this is epic. I'm going to make this my house. Like, I would just like, nobody decided to live in it. That's because it got destroyed for a reason, and it was covered. It was like everything was covered, and they're all destroyed by the same earthquakes that happen or whatever.
They don't even, we don't know. They really don't even say. I think that was one of those things where doing
all the temples in India, all of them, all over the world, all the temples are all destroyed.
Just doing all the research in the different places we did, where I was trying to connect things, because again, like I'm starting with the Bible, but obviously there's a lot in between. Well, we're told it's 2,000 years since the last book was written, so you're trying to figure out, you're trying to fill in the gaps. And then what I really found was, because obviously the Roman Empire is the one that's talked about the most, kind of the most influential one, obviously, on modern society. But then when I found out that historians argued within hundreds of years when it fell, I was like, wait a minute. Okay, so now this is like, okay, wait a minute. I have a problem with this narrative.
Yeah, like, how do we just forget our history?
Yeah, this is not like ancient Egypt where people are not sure. Like we're told the Romans wrote everything down. So I started to like think, well, this is weird. And then you start to hear like that the Romans invented all kinds of things they don't know how they did. And I was like, wait a minute, again, I thought they wrote everything down. I thought that cities like Paris and London were Roman cities. So if Rome fell in early antiquity, well, then the Romans were everywhere, though. You know what I mean? It's not like Romans were just Italians. Yeah. They ruled the whole earth. So they set up governors and prefects everywhere. So how did their information, their knowledge, their history ever get lost into some kind of a dark age? Well, I think the dark age comes from like what Brian was talking about, is that historians write about this year 536. And if you look at this up, they'll tell you this was the worst year on record, whatever the heck that means. It was just that that year started with 18 months of darkness, or it begat 18 months of darkness. Obviously, it's only 12 months in a year, but there was 18 months of darkness.
People eating their babies.
Well, it was followed by like a mini ice age. There was wars and famines at the same time too. But also, it was followed by the bubonic plague, which some historians talk about that up to like 90% of the population of the world could have died during this time. That's not talked about.
Are you a hunter, a hiker, or just an outdoor enthusiast? Well, if you are, you know that good quality gear is hard to come by. And finding all-American made is like finding Bigfoot in the woods. Hence the name of Squatch Survival Gear. Head on over to squatchsurvivalgear.com. Use the code PLP10 for 10% off store-wide. With the price of eggs and bread slowly approaching a day's wages, it's more important than ever than to secure the value of your dollar. One thing that has remained steady is gold and silver throughout the ages. Back in Roman times, a piece of gold would get you a toga. That's the equivalent of $3,000 today. That still remains true to this day. For a full suit, shoes, tie, you're looking at about $3,000. Because gold and silver holds its value. So if you're tired of watching the value of your dollar go down every single day, it's time to get off your hands and make a move. I've recently teamed with Cornerstone Asset Metals. Reach out to those guys for all of your financial needs. It's time to trade in that forever devaluing dollar into hard assets that you can hold, like gold and silver. Be sure and check the link down in the description or the number on the screen. And hey, tell them Doc Brown sent you. Hey guys, if you'd like to take a deeper dive into this hero's journey, we have an all-access pass that can get you there. With this pass, you get 48 hours early access to the private Facebook group, members-only episodes, and an ad-free listening experience. And if you'd like to just skip the ads and get 48-hour early access, we have another members tier that is only $4 a month. And if you guys are not familiar with Supercast, you are missing out. This is the future of behind the paywall content. Patreon, you have to go to a third-party site to consume your content. When 90% of us are on Spotify, Apple, Podbean, all these others to begin with to consume our content. With Supercast, you sync it up to your favorite player, and it puts the ad-free content and members-only content on a separate feed on your favorite player. So no more logging into third-party sites and hassle to listen to your favorite content. But you can also log into Supercast, and I have videos, blog posts, and other extra features there very similar to Patreon. Come on over to Supercast and experience the difference. To become a member, head on over to PrometheusLensPodcast.com and follow the members link, or you can go directly to PrometheusLens.supercast.com. And I've made it easy for you. There's even a link in the description.
And so what we're told through history is that the Western Roman Empire fell through barbarians, just barbarians at the gates of Rome, just dropped the city. And then lots of people talk about mid-antiquity as this kind of catastrophic event that happened, and that's when the Western or the Eastern Roman Empire fell, like in Constantinople and all that in Turkey. But then there was another event in late antiquity that was I can't remember, it's not written about much, but it was kind of like right before the second millennia, there was also another kind of cataclysm where there was disaster in Northern Europe. Well, we found this really interesting research where this German historian talked about that he believed, based on the stratigraphy, that all these buildings were built at the same level. Because he was like digging down into the dirt. It's like, so if you go dig down into the layers of the earth, most often you'll find Roman things. But there's nothing under the Roman things. So all these time periods, and I think this is where the idea of a dark ages comes from, is the idea that during the first millennium AD, that language did not advance, culture did not advance, and architecture did not advance. And that's why they call it a dark age. But the problem is that there's a lot of false time in there because all those buildings...
And nobody wrote anything down, supposedly.
Well, right. There's no history of that time. There's all kinds of blanks in the history, and that's why they call it a dark age. But what?
Now, is this the Greek Dark Age you're talking about, like after the Trojan War?
No, this is
No.
literally right
Okay.
after the times like the biblical canon ends in the first
Okay.
century, and after this we have the Empire of Rome falls at some point during the first millennia, Western and Eastern Roman Empire. But what you see in the stratigraphy is that all these buildings are built on the same layer of strata. So what this Gunnar Heinsohn concluded was that there was 700 years added to that first millennia AD. And he literally attributes all of this to a worldwide cataclysm. Like, if you think about it, if historians wrote about the idea that the sun did not shine for 18 months, can you only imagine how disastrous that would be for the whole earth? The world, I mean, they literally say it caused a mini ice age, and then there was a bubonic plague afterwards. I mean, if you really start to line this stuff up, this sounds like, if you take the 700 years out, this sounds like the book of Revelation played out.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why we don't know more about that time period, is because most of the people likely perished in this time. And maybe this is, but if you also think about this, if you move this up or closer to us, you have all this Greco-Roman architecture all around the whole earth. Even in places like Japan and China where it doesn't belong. What if that's because it was actually really Greco-Roman and it was really, they're the ones who built that. And they did rule the whole world. Places like Australia, there's Greco-Roman things all over this realm.
Mm-hmm.
And it even matches Genesis. One of the things that I liked looking into was, like Noah's flood. And there was a guy, Walt Brown, he wrote In the Beginning, and he talked about pretty much the same thing that you guys were describing. And it made a lot of sense to me. And he was talking about he believed it was once like a supercontinent, basically. And he shows what they call it, the oceanic ridge.
Mm-hmm.
How it's like, scars of a baseball or seams of a baseball. And he says that he thinks that was the fracture point. He said that there was either a comet or earthquake, some kind of cataclysm that triggered these events. He said, and it caused the plates to push apart. And he said, and of course, this caused earthquakes. This caused volcanoes to erupt. Ash and soot filled the air, darkened the sun, lowered the temperatures, brought on the first ice age, and all this stuff. And then he said, and what's even crazier is when you look at all the oceanic ridges in the world, all the major mountain ranges, no exceptions, line up perfectly parallel with these oceanic ridges. So it shows you this was the push point. But all of a sudden, when it met resistance, like a car hitting a wall, the hood rolls up. So that's how the mountains, were formed in his vision. So it's like, what you guys are talking about was this a repeat.
Well, that's the interesting thing is kind of when also in this research that geologists talk about these two sedimentary fills that they can point to in the sediment. But of course, I think they still use the chronology we have, so they try to stretch some of it out. But you have this one where they talk about the deluge, where there's this massive fill. Kind of, you look through the record, you can see this one fill. But then there's a second one. And it looks like
the deluge is
Yeah,
the
so
deluge one is like called where we get bedrock from, that you see the dinosaurs that are oftentimes in. There is a bedrock layer throughout the entire earth right now where it's limey mud from some type of water flood instance where limey mud basically became like cement and it cemented over the whole earth. So if you dig down in any dirt right now, you will dig down and eventually hit the bedrock layer. That's evidence of a giant global flood. And that's where you find dinosaur stuff, like right there. And so that's layer one, but there's a second one that he's talking about that is also before you get to the bedrock layer that you see throughout the rest of the world that also happens to have massive signs of destruction and chaos. And so it's like there's two of these things. And so it's kind of makes you wonder, like, was that the sign of Revelation? Like, and the other one was the flood? I don't know. Like it's
kind of what people talk about when they talk about the mud flood. I mean, it's clearly that there's another sedimentary fill that they don't ever tell us about. And I think that's the thing that really has just kind of stuck in my craw this whole time, that Okay, so what do you do with that idea that these buildings are half buried in America? Like, I don't know what you do with that, because the mainstream explanation for it, either they don't even try to explain it, or they say they give you like ridiculous stories about like places like Seattle that once flooded and then it burned down and then they built on top of a burned down city. And that's why there's an underground layer to it. Like, that's nonsensical. But I joke with my friends all the time now. It's like I have this little thread on Instagram where I always send my friends all these stories where these Roman ruins are accidentally discovered like every single day. I can send them stories about how, hey, this guy's farming in his farm and like all of a sudden digging in his field, and all of a sudden he finds some Roman mosaic. Or they're trying to build a new subway and they find a Roman bathhouse. How did Rome get buried? You know that the barbarians didn't do that.
To the whole world. To the whole world.
Right. So all these Roman ruins are buried all over the place. It's kind of, I mean, it's really troubling if you don't have an answer for that. Because that's what I was saying. Like, okay, so let's just say we're wrong. Well, then explain it to me. I'm happy to have an answer if it doesn't make sense like this. But I think when you're a biblical Christian, you actually start to look back at the things Jesus said. He's pointing to a very specific time. Even the book of Revelation says that Jesus says, I'm coming quickly. He tells John to not seal up this prophecy because the time is at hand. Which
says, some of you standing here today will not taste death till you see the Son of Man coming in the clouds in his kingdom.
Yeah, so if you go read the Daniel prophecies that are also about the end times, the angel tells Daniel to seal up the words of this prophecy until the times of the end. When Jesus is on the earth, he's quoting from Daniel.
Yeah.
So he's saying like it's about to happen. And then the book of Revelation says, do not seal up this prophecy. So as a Christian, I'm saying, okay, well, this kind of explains it then. Because if Revelation happened, then like you said, you have two big sedimentary fills. One was the deluge when God destroyed the earth by a flood. And then maybe this is the one where he destroyed it by fire, which my current conclusion on maybe how that could have happened is that really fascinating, and I didn't know this until recently, was that, do you know the first volcanic activity on record, in the historical record anyways, that's written down about, was Pompeii, Mount Vesuvius.
Yeah, Vesuvius.
That was the very first one that's ever been written about. So out of all of human history, that's the only one. And so even based on the current chronology we have is, so Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD, which was the same generation Jesus said would experience the tribulation. What the chronology says
writes, I'm your brother in tribulation.
Yeah.
By the way, he literally says he's your brother in tribulation. He's saying he's in the tribulation.
Yeah, so
yeah, they just got through Nero. You know what I mean?
Well, right.
He was a psychotic guy.
They clearly experienced tribulation. So, but Mount Vesuvius, based on history, says that mountain erupted in 79 AD. So right after Jerusalem was destroyed, this corrupt Roman city was destroyed by a volcano. And we're told about it often. So it's kind of weird. And so, again, what Brian was saying, that geologists, historians, they attribute 536 to potentially a volcano, or maybe multiple volcanoes going off. What if that's what happened?
What if it was the first volcano?
But it was not 536. What if it was
76?
What if it was in the first century, right after Jerusalem was destroyed? And what if that sedimentary fill came from the earth? It came up and over, and that's why lots of it is dark earth, burned, scorched things.
And well, the Terra Preta layer that is basically around the entire earth actually shows signs of burning without oxygen. Okay. And this is very key. So there was to create Terra Preta earth, it's dark earth, you have to burn it without oxygen. So there was a difference in the atmosphere, and which sounds to me like some kind of chaotic event had to have happened if you're going to get like some fire without oxygen over the whole earth in some regard. I mean, like, that's just pretty unusual that exists. I mean, but like, what if all the volcanoes, like, for the first time erupted all over the earth all at once? You know what I mean? Like, at this moment, and created this dark cloud, turned the moon red, blacked out the sun, every babies are dying. That's why I said, Jesus, how terrible will it be for nursing mothers in those days, right? In Revelation,
Yeah.
it literally says that, and he also says like
Matthew 24.
yeah, and then Matthew 24, and also it says like pray that it's not on the Sabbath, bro. That would not matter today. That wouldn't mean crap today. Okay, they would just be like, oh, get in your cars and drive, guys. But like back then, at that moment, it had a relevancy.
Pray that even referring back to the Maccabees, because that revolt happened on a Sabbath and they stood down. They didn't do anything. A lot of them were slaughtered.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that's the thing. But today, that's irrelevant. That's because it doesn't apply today. It applied to them then, at that time, in that moment, bro. Like we have cars today. Like there's no flee to the mountains. And by the way, one of the Caesars stood in the temple and declared himself God. So like we can get into like the whole aspect of like all the events that you can find in Revelation actually happened, or the fact that the temple got destroyed and they just didn't happen to write that down. It's just like, okay, well, the temple's going to be destroyed a second time, but the first time it gets destroyed, we'll just not write it down and say that, you know what, where they date Revelation right now? They date Revelation in 90 AD because they say that there's no way that the text that they're writing about could have been prophetically written beforehand, because it lined up so well with the events that happened in history that they're like, it's got to be written afterwards, and it must be referring to a second temple or another thing. Bro, it was obviously written before the first temple's destruction, and it was prophetic, but they didn't want you to believe that it was prophetic, so they told us that this is referring to an event that's going to happen in 2,000 years from now. Right. So like, but there is so much evidence like in the world today that you can point to. And there's this Roman historian, Josephus, who talks, you can read Josephus's writings. It'll blow your mind. He talks about things that sound straight out of the book of Revelation that were happening. And it like talks about the streets being filled with supernatural levels of blood. Okay. So like, dude, he talks about of fires, unnatural fires they couldn't put out. Talks about all kinds of chaos going on. I mean, Pompeii, you see the people frozen in stone in places of just like, one dude is like touching himself in Pompeii, and there's all kinds of debaucherous stuff going on there. Dude, that's the reminder, leftover remnant of Revelation happening. Or how about all the bodies that we found that they line the catacombs with?
Well, that's a whole different rabbit hole right there to go into the catacombs.
Whole other one, yeah. But these things are just like, we've got evidence of stuff that they try to give you narratives for or explanatory, reasons for how or why this exists. They don't hold up and they don't make sense. But if you take it into context and go, hey, maybe they just screwed with our timeline a little bit, and these events are all actually part of this event, everything starts to make sense. You realize how they developed our timelines are complete baloney, fabricated nonsense. They took, our timelines. And why do you think they all start at BC and AD? Because the entire world knew. Yeah, the entire world knew some major event happened that the entire world was okay with and aware of, that this major event was so significant that everyone in every culture and every calendar was in an agreement of some capacity to be like, yeah, this event, this is serious. I think we'll go off of this mark, because there was massive worldwide events, destruction, the whole earth turned to blackness, and people went around preaching the gospel, and they're like, yeah, oh yeah, I remember that whole day that there was all these earthquakes and volcano. Yeah, that was because the son of Jesus, the son of God, showed up, and people were like, probably like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, like okay, I guess we'll go with that maybe.
Well, yeah, I would say
it never made sense to me that they had, what was it, like 30 something structures that they found, like they excavated like 4% of that site because it's so large and all these different stone structures, but they said that they buried them.
Oh, good.
That never made sense to me. I'm like, to me, maybe the global flood buried these things, because if they took the time to build all these structures, who the hell is going to shovel for 40, 50 years just to bury this stuff?
Yes. Ridiculous.
Well, that's kind of the whole thing, is that that's not only did they build megalithic things, but they did very unusual things like bury their own places. Again, it's kind of ridiculous when you actually think about like the idea of like, if you had to go bury your own house, what would it look like? If you could do it, it would take a long time.
I just burn it.
Well, it would look
Burn it, knock it down.
Well, for one, it would look like a hill, right? Then if somebody told you to bury your whole neighborhood, well, that would be harder. And then if somebody told you to bury your whole city, it would be impossible. Because what we're not talking about a pyramid structure. We're talking about a flat ground. Like everything is level. Like especially like in that area of Göbekli Tepe, it's not a mound. It's literally like under the ground. And that's I believe that's probably is Days of Noah type stuff. But who knows? Maybe that might have been exposed before what we're talking about happened. And I think that, there's some like this could go on forever talking about this stuff. But what I just want to make clear is that there is so much evidence of a catastrophe sometime between the first century and now. Unbelievable amount of evidence. When you go, like you said, you take a look at places like Cappadocia, Turkey, which interestingly enough, the book of Revelation is written to 7 churches that were in Asia, not in Asia anymore because they were all destroyed.
Yeah, they don't exist.
But in Turkey, that's where they're from. So Cappadocia is a place mentioned in the Bible. If you guys have ever seen pictures of that place, it looks like it looks like mountains that look like they melted like ice cream. And so, but there's lots of things like that. Even like think about going, like if you go hiking out in the West Coast of America, there's all kinds of unbelievable places in Utah, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado. Yeah, there's just
the Garden of the Gods. I mean, that thing's amazing.
New Mexico. There's just places that look like, I don't know what happened to this place, but there's no way that wind and rain did this over a million years. This looks like a lot of heat happened in this place. It looks like things have been melted. Like rocks that look like mushrooms and weird arches and stuff like that. It looks like if you drop this, if nukes are real, it looks like one was dropped on this place. And but I mean, so you have that evidence, and then you have evidence that places like Rome were buried in. Like what Brian mentioned was that it is sort of crazy to think that at one point everyone was worshiping Zeus or Jupiter or whatever pantheon of gods they were. But then one day they just stopped. And then they said, hey, we need to divide the calendar based on when Jesus got here and what's after Jesus. I think that's like, it's like you grow up in a world where like that's common, but that's really kind of insane when you think about it, that everyone just said, let's just divide the calendar again. I don't think you divide the calendar unless you didn't know what year it was. It's kind of like if you ever guys watch The Matrix, when
you're lost, so you restart your journey. Well, we're here.
You start, and it's probably likely that the BC stuff is literally them just trying to figure out that's why if you really go back into BC, people just kind of say like this is around when this happened because they really have no idea. They just know here's the dividing line in our history is when Jesus got here. But if it was Jesus the Lamb who got here and that was it, we would have an unbroken timeline. But if it was Jesus the Lion who came back and wrecked everything, that would explain why you would need to redate everything.
Well, I want to play devil's advocate because I've heard somebody else talk about this. Are you guys familiar with Ed Mabry?
Oh, yeah, I am.
Well, one thing he said that kind of stood out to me, and I thought it was a good question, but I was, like I said, I just playing devil's advocate here. But he said, why, if Christ did return, why would God allow it to be erased and covered up? Wouldn't he preserve that for the remnant and for the body of Christ, instead of allowing the devil to deceive the entire world and cost them their salvation ultimately? And then that one verse that Brian had brought up, he had said, where it said, "Some of you will not taste death until you see the coming of the glory of the Son of Man." He said that he did fulfill that because it was just a few chapters later that he took them to Mount Hermon and transfigured, so they saw him come in his glory.
No, they didn't.
I just wonder what you guys thought about that.
Well, okay, a couple.
Let me answer that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Wait.
You go ahead.
They didn't see him coming in his glory. He was on the mountain, and afterwards he said, "Shh, don't tell nobody." So, like, that's not coming in his glory, bro. That's not at all coming in his glory on the mountain of Hermon. Like when the transfiguration, not remotely glorious. Okay, if you appear and then you tell people, don't build a temple, don't show them who I am, don't say nothing. That's not glory. Would you agree or not? I mean, I feel like that's a simple answer. Like, that's like coming in his glory. If you read the description of him coming in his glory, it is not, it's like bright destruction, great throne judgment. That's what it's referencing. Not made himself known that he was, the son of God and shining, the end. That's silly. That's a silly argument that people try to say that. That's clearly not what it's talking about. And he says, some of you standing here today will not taste death until you see that, right? Like, I mean, that's silly to be like, it said coming in the clouds. He wasn't appearing in the clouds either on that mountain.
Well, let's read exactly what it says. So if you go into Matthew 16, let's start with verse 27, because a lot of times people skip right to 28. For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels.
Okay.
In the glory of his Father, and then he will repay each person according to what he has done. Mm-hmm. Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming into his kingdom. So, so by the way, that event was recorded. By saying they're gonna see me coming with the angels. So the context is that, and also, yes, Brian rightly said, like if I was telling you, like, hey, listen, I got this new car and I'm gonna show you how fast it goes, and I'm gonna do it tomorrow. I'll tell you, Doc, some of you standing here will not taste death until you see me do this wheelie tomorrow. Like, it makes no sense to talk about some of them dying when none of them will be dead when it happens. Not all of them will be present, but nobody's going to be dead. And actually, if you go into the book of John, let's go into John real quick. See, this is one of those things where, like, once you start to see this, it's like, so if you go to the Gospel of John, you go to the very first chapter. And so the context here is obviously Jesus is calling the apostles. And so I'm going to start with verse 47. Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said to him, "Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael said to him, "How do you know me?" Jesus answered him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." Nathanael answered him, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God, you are the King of Israel." And Jesus answered him, "Because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man."
Dude.
So he tells Nathanael specifically, you're going to see this. Mm-hmm. And I think it's quite a cop-out to say, you'll see this after you die. I think that because he was not present when they went up for the transfiguration. So he was not there. So if he told him specifically that he would see that, what would you have to say if he did not see that before he died? I would say that it would make Jesus seem like a liar.
Yep. Yeah. And then lastly, the third point to this one question, then we'll answer the other question you asked, because I like the other question too. But there was a actual event recorded in history about this happening. Now, this is the book of Josephus. This is Josephus's writings. Recommend everybody get this and read through what actually happened after Jesus died, because it's fascinating, because nobody even knows. They keep you very ignorant in the church. But Josephus is a valid historical. He was a Jewish, studying to be a Jewish Pharisee or a scribe or whatever. And then he converted to a Roman citizen, and he wrote down what we consider the Roman record. So this is like considered part of Roman record. Okay. And it was like, he wrote all the events that happened. Now, he wrote in the Jewish wars in book 6 and chapter 5, there is a specific passage that happens. And this is recorded in his historical context, as well as I believe there's 2 other historians that write about this event happening. That is exactly that verse we just read. And this happened and I'm going to just read it for you guys. It says, "A certain great and incredible phenomenon appeared. I suppose the account of it would have seemed to be a fable, were it not related by those who saw it, and were not the events that followed it of so considerable a nature as to deserve such signals. For before sunsetting, chariots and troops of soldiers in their armor were seen, running among the clouds and the surrounding of the cities. Moreover, at that feast, which they called Pentecost, going by night into the inner court of the temple as their customs was to perform their sacred ministrations, they said in the first place, they felt a great quaking and heard a great noise. And after that, they heard a sound of a great multitude saying, let us remove from here, or let us make haste, or let us be gone. Okay, this is a weirdly strange event. Okay, it was recorded in Roman record. Again, in multiple other records, but such a peculiar, strange event. And now most of his writings are pretty dry. It's like very like this happened, then this happened, this happened, then this happened. Then you get to this and you're like, he's like, I suppose it would be considered a fable, but I feel like maybe I should write it down because it was kind of weird and important. And a bunch of people looked up in the clouds and saw a bunch of dudes in suits of armor, in chariots and troops of armor, which some of them recorded as giants in suits of armor. In the clouds, in every city, everywhere, all over the earth, people saw this. Okay, and then they all said, let us be gone from here, or let us remove, or let us be
Well,
late.
I'm not sure if they said everybody saw it in every city, but I know that was above Jerusalem when it fell.
Mm-hmm.
Like during the Jewish-Roman War, which interestingly enough, it mentions in the Bible that there's a time of Jacob's trouble that's 1,260 days, that there's a time in the book of Revelation, chapter 11, that the Gentiles are given 42 months to trample the holy city. 42 months, 3.5 years is exactly the amount of time it took Rome to destroy Jerusalem, burn it to the ground, destroy the temple.
Yep. And so when you see all of these events laying out in history and in record and with evidence, you at a certain point you got to be like a complete fool that's just so full of pride that you've studied your text and you're like, well, I know the answers and blah, blah, blah. And my pastor said this and my pastor. Yeah. Good luck understanding the truth then, because it's played out right there in front of you. I just read you some crazy event that just happened and it's recorded again in multiple accounts. So it's like, how is this invalid? And people are like, well, it's not the Bible. Well, guess what? This book Josephus wrote is the reason why you believe your Bible, because it was the text that he wrote that determined what texts would be canonized, what they determined the Bible to be. So it's like, this dude's pretty substantial, and it's not just his record, it's multiple others as well. And so when we look into this, you start to realize like, dude, and he didn't necessarily believe in Jesus because he was Jewish or whatever, but he wrote about Jesus existing. And so it's very obvious that this dude who didn't believe in Jesus is writing from like an outsider's perspective, events that you're like, this is sounding like maybe he should have believed in Jesus at this point, because like, honestly, it's pretty weird that there's so much of it is sounding biblically in alignment with Revelation and stuff.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to say that, again, I want to put this out there to everybody. You don't have to believe this. You don't have to believe what we're saying, but I think it's something you have to consider. Just as I said, you need to be able to consider what are the alternative explanations for that there was a worldwide cataclysm. That if you think about the way the book of the Bible's written, the Bible's telling us about this massive cataclysm that's coming one day. But then there's a massive cataclysm that happens in the middle between then and us. And if that wasn't the times of Revelation, then what was it? And so God is going to talk about this one future cataclysm, but there is people who are not Christians who will say that up to 90% of the world's population could have died during the first millennia. But most people don't know that. So, I mean, I think that, again, Josephus, yes, he is a valid source, because I know before I got on this train at all and looked into this, I read the book, The Case for Christ. And so that's where a lot of people are validated the Gospels and the letters from Paul and the Bible in general, because, Josephus wrote the Antiquity of the Jews. And it basically is just like a narrative that shows all the kind of the books of the Bible and kind of like that second temple period Pharisee mindset of like what they believe was canonized scriptures. And he tells the story that eventually leads to Jesus. And then what we don't have in the Bible is the Jewish-Roman War. The real question is, why isn't that in the Bible? If John wrote the book of Revelation in the 90s and the Jewish-Roman War took place between 66 AD and 70 AD, why is there not no book of the Bible talking about that? I think it's pretty obvious because the book of Revelation was not written in 90 AD.
Right.
It was written before that because otherwise it most definitely would have been in Scripture. Because it's funny, like you think about it, that if we're wrong, well, why isn't there anyone to tell us we're wrong? Why isn't John telling us what's right? Because John would have been lived during that time.
Jesus said not one stone would be lifted upon another. Well, guess what? Today, there's not one single stone on top of it. And that happened in 76 AD.
Well, 70 AD. What said that even Josephus wrote about. So Jesus makes this prophecy in Matthew 24, Luke 21, and Mark 13, where the disciples are talking about the temple and how glorious it is. And he said, truly I tell you, not one stone upon this will be left upon the other. They will all be thrown down. Well, Josephus wrote about when the Romans burned down the temple, gold melted down into the foundations, and the Romans literally pried up the foundations to get the gold. So they destroyed 100% of that old temple. And so let's just say that was significant because Jesus obviously said that was going to happen. Why would that not be in the Bible? It'd be like writing a history of New York City and not talking about 9/11.
Right.
Like the only reason you would do that is because it was written before 2001. So if it's written when they say it is, then it's because there's really it's quite an omission, right? Like you wouldn't validate the things Jesus said, the prophecies he said would come true. And you know what? Let's just go read a little bit. We'll take on that next question that he asked about Revelation chapter 20.
We got to read Revelation 20. That's
we should just read it because I mean it's a good question. So why would God let these things be covered up?
Yeah, just read Revelation 20.
This is a question I asked myself when I read this before I even came to this conclusion at all. Okay, we're going to read. We'll start with verse 1. It says, "Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding in his hand the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain, and he seized the dragon, that ancient serpent who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And he threw him into a pit and shut it up and sealed it over, so he might not deceive the nations any longer, until the 1,000 years was ended. After that, he must be released for a little while, or little season."
Yeah, so he stopped him from deceiving until the 1,000 years was ended, and that's just the nature of Satan. So like he is going to deceive. And the seals are the seal that is over him. Well, we won't get into that. Never mind.
Yeah.
Continue.
Okay. So then I saw thrones and seated on them those who given the authority to authority judge was committed. Also, I saw the souls of those who were beheaded for their testimony and Jesus for the word of God.
Now, nobody's getting the testimony of Jesus right there. It's referring to people that had eyewitness accounts of Jesus. So they're waiting 2,000 years before they get their judgment. They're just like chilling after they got their heads chopped off. No, it's referring to people from the event at that time. Sorry.
Okay. And those who had not worshipped the beast or its image and had not received the mark on their foreheads or their hands, they came to life and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. And the rest of the dead did not come to life until the 1,000 years were ended. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy are those who share in the first resurrection. Over such, the second death has no power. But they will be priests of God and of Christ, and they will reign with him for 1,000 years. And when the 1,000 years are ended, Satan will be released from his prison, and he will come out to deceive the nations that are the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. And their number is like the sand of the sea. And they marched up the broad plain of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints in the beloved city. But fire came down from heaven and consumed them. And the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and false prophet were. And they will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Okay, so there's a few more verses, but if you read that with the futurist mindset, which I used to, it says, so the preceding chapter basically ends with Armageddon. There's this battle where all these people are slain, and the birds eat the flesh of the mighty men and the kings and all the people. So
even though everybody gets evaporated up into rapture heaven.
Well,
right?
yeah. Well, I mean, the point is there's this big battle, and then so the false prophet and the beast are thrown into the lake of fire. But then Revelation chapter 20 starts with the devil being bound and thrown into a pit. So, of course, I think that for me, just like, again, like I'm not reading this trying to read the little season into this. I'm just wondering, why doesn't God just throw Satan into like a fire too at that point? Isn't it kind of over? But it's clearly not over because he doesn't. He puts him in a pit and then he allows him to come out later. And then so with the futurist mindset that I used to have, I thought, I believe what I was taught, that Jesus is going to rule in physical Jerusalem like we've all known. Like we always pictured him to be in this specific place at the specific time and being surrounded by resurrected saints. But how will the devil deceive the rest of the world during that time if it's exactly like we're taught?
Yeah.
Either way, I mean, again, I'm not saying you have to agree with my interpretation, but you do have to think, how are people going to be deceived if it's like you think it is? Because if Jesus is right there, the God King is right there with his resurrected saints, how's the devil going to say, hey, everyone, let's go fight against the God King?
Yeah.
Let's go on this suicide mission against the God King, even though I just got let out of a pit. So what if it's not like you think it is? And that is why. And so the real question is, what Ed asked is, why would God let that happen? Go ask God. Because you see it happens right there. Because the rest of the world does agree to go fight against God, against Jesus and the camp of the saints for some reason. I mean, my answer would be everything that it always relies on faith. Because if Jesus was sitting on a physical throne, on the throne of David in some new temple in Jerusalem and ruling, well, then,
every knee would bow.
Well, then how would you really have faith in that kind of time period? It would almost be being back under the law, because it's like, okay, I don't need faith in a person I can see who's telling me what to do. So in this certain time period, it's like that. The truth is out there, right? I mean, the main truth that really only matters is, do you believe in Jesus? Do you put your faith in God's Son? And do you accept his gift of grace? I mean, so what else really matters besides that is the fact that maybe the devil is allowed to deceive because we worship an invisible God and we don't always know. And so if we're saved by faith and grace, it's like, how would you be saved in the little season if it was like what people thought it would be like?
And that's the interesting thing is, like, you don't, like, we make assumptions all the time. And like, I have a perspective as why God would have allowed this in the first place. And it's literally comes down to, like, he wants to know your heart, and when God sent Jesus, he reset the video game. No longer are we governed by laws. No longer are we governed by principles. Jesus came, I came not to fulfill the law or condemn the law, but to fulfill it, which when it's fulfilled, it's still done. And he said, I will write my commandments upon their head and I will put them in their heart. Okay. They'll be in their minds and their hearts. So the commandments are now already inside of you. Doc Brown, what is good, what you were supposed to do, what is right. And that commandment is now inside of your heart. And so Jesus came after that. It was like there was 40 years between when Jesus came and when the destruction happened in 76. 40 years of just total, and the message of Jesus spread to the whole earth. And then death, destruction, chaos, reset. And then there was 1,000 years where Jesus and his elect reestablished the society as a whole. And that was the 1,000-year reign of Christ. And society was reestablished and regrown as a stable form. And then he said, okay, now with these new rules, I'm going to let Satan back out. Just like Satan came in with the old rules when he came into the Garden of Eden. God, I think, just was like, okay, now that we have the new ground rules, which is established, Satan said, oh, well, because the first time Satan said, oh, well, they only love you, God, because you let them love you, because you give them everything, and Satan and God's like, okay, well, test them, and they failed. And there was this stuff, and then God proved himself. But now God reset the game, and he's like, okay, well, now Satan, go ahead and test my people again. You think they're still going to turn against me? I'm telling you, it's their heart that I love and that I want and that I know. And so God allowed Satan to come back out to do his satanic thing, to influence society in a limited way, maybe not to the full extent as he did prior, because prior he was able to mess with genetics, but now he's doing different things, trying to influence people's minds and let the demons out. And now that's what we're dealing with now. And God's just allowing it to happen because the testing of your faith produces perseverance, right? And it produces truth, and it produces love, and it shows the true colors of your character. You know what I mean? Like, it's like everything's good when you're with somebody. If you're dating somebody and everybody's good and no problems come out, then, like, you know, of course they're going to be with you. But when the crap hits the fan, then you really see their character. Satan is the crap in the fan. Okay. Like, and that's why God, that's why God let him out. He was like, let's see the crap in the fan. Okay. Boom. Let's see who the real character is. Show us who you really are. Like, and that's why God did this. It allows us to come into our understanding of who we really. That's why he let him out. Because it wasn't supposed to be all hunky-dory, peace forever for 1,000 years. There was 1,000 years of that.
Well,
and then God was like, okay.
Even still, it says in the 1,000 years that God, Jesus rules with a rod of iron.
Yeah,
so I think that's another perspective people just miss, is like that. So they picture in their mind is that like the finish line is the millennial reign, but it's not the end. So it's clearly not the end. So why would Jesus need to rule with a rod of iron in a time that's just peaceful with just the saints? It's not just the saints.
No,
it's normal. It's normal people. It's just like it is today, that even in times of Jesus, he says the kingdom's not coming in ways that can be observed. He says, like, the kingdom's in the midst of you. And he's talking about himself being filled with the Holy Spirit. He talks about ruling through ruling through kings and priests. You think about even like our history, the way we're even taught, as incorrect as it might be, there are these stories where there's these kingdoms that are Christian monarchies that have to go back and forth with the Catholic Church or the Protestant Church. There's these battles between the church and the monarchy. So I mean, that kind of fits. Again, then you have you have the Anno Domini timeline. But yeah, I mean, I think at the same time, like what Brian was saying, is that if you want someone to love you and show you they actually choose you, you have to give them an alternative, right? If you love someone, set them free. So without the alternative of this other idea of like that you can go follow your heart, you can do what thou wilt, you can follow Satan's world, you can follow mammon, you can search for money and riches and all the things the world has to offer. Well, I mean, if like what God says, you think about going back to Deuteronomy, was when Moses gives them, let heaven and earth be a witness. Do you want life and blessings or death and curses? Well, like literally, if you show like heaven and hell right here, who's ever going to choose hell?
Right.
No one.
Yeah.
But if you don't show them that, who's going to choose hell? Lots of people.
And you brought up Deuteronomy 32. I thought that was, or Deuteronomy. And I was immediately thinking of Deuteronomy 32 when Brian was talking earlier, just a few moments ago. And I was wanting to pick your brain on this because it just popped in there. Mm-hmm. I'm a firm believer that there it says, not only were the tongues divided, but the nations were divided amongst the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim. Yeah. And so where it says at the resurrection of Christ, it says he goes down into hell, proclaims victory, he leads a host of captives. And I always had that imagery of the Roman soldiers and the people of that time when they defeated a monarch or a king, and they would take him and the survivors and put them in chains and drag them and like in a parade for everybody to see. Mm-hmm. And it said that he spoiled the sons of God. And Psalms 82 talks about, how long will you rule unjustly? You show partiality to the wicked. You desire to live the eternal life, but you shall die and fall like any prince. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because they were inheritance. They were inheritors. So where Brian had mentioned, the tearing down of these strongholds, it's like that to me, that's what popped up in my mind, was him leading this host of captives, spoiling the sons of God, taking away their dominion, their lordship. And even around this time, 70 AD, you have accounts where they talk about the priests of Apollo. Yeah. Go silent.
No oracles, right?
Yes. Then a voice comes to this ship captain and says that Pan is dead.
That's amazing.
And so it's like, are we witnessing the tearing down of these lords right there in history?
Well, right. That could that corroborate like Revelation 12 where there's this battle in heaven that these beings get thrown down. They're unwelcome in the heavenly places anymore. They're thrown down to earth, and then they get judged. They're the ones who are getting funneled into the valley of Jehoshaphat to fight the battle of Armageddon and get slaughtered. Because I think a lot of that stuff there was definitely physical aspects to it, but I do think a lot of it there was the spiritual battle that, just like today, that when it talks about the devil and these other spiritual entities getting judged, we might not see it, but we will feel the effects of it. Yeah, in the same way that these priests of Apollo, I'm not getting any oracles from anymore.
Yeah.
Wonder why?
Why isn't he answering his phone? It's kind of like it's very interesting that I made those connections when I was still looking for the future events to happen. That the being that's put in the bottomless pit is Apollyon, Apollo. Well, it says in Revelation 19, and he's thrown into the lake of fire. So maybe that's why he wasn't speaking to anyone after that.
Yeah, exactly. And now, if we are in this little season, it said he was led out with his host of angels and captives. What if that is the sons of God from Deuteronomy 32, and they're led out with him too, and they try to retake their thrones, and it's a whole Game of Thrones in the spiritual realm?
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, I think so. It's funny because I've been hammering on my channel. I know Brian's probably almost getting tired of hearing about it. Is that I've been going down the Tolkien rabbit hole, and so have you watched any of the movies or read any of the books?
Yeah, I've watched the movies. Now, I did a show with Gary Wayne, and he talked about the symbolism and the hidden stuff behind that film a while back.
Well, I find
that stuff fascinating.
Yeah, the real interesting part is, so Tolkien, he was in the Inklings, and so was C.S. Lewis, and a lot of people believe that was some kind of secret society where they might have had more knowledge about these issues than we think. Tolkien historically was a Catholic. So there's a lot of imagery there, but I thought it was really interesting. So the new show, The Rings of Power, that's based on obviously some events in the Silmarillion that obviously precede the Lord of the Rings. But what I found super interesting was that kind of idea is that there was this previous Dark Lord in Tolkien's time, in the First Age in Tolkien's mythos. I almost attribute that to the idea that you have the first Watchers, Semyaza, Azazel, that they are put in Tartarus. And eventually they're going to be judged. They're judged on Judgment Day. So they're done. But then you have this being that comes out later. And he doesn't try to conquer through just brute force and power or malice. He's the deceiver. And that's Sauron, who appears as an angel of light. And that's kind of how he is, where he gets people to do his bidding, not by forcing them, but because he's very crafty. And it's that seems okay, that's the devil is who he is, right? It's because he doesn't attempt to overpower anyone. It's he manipulates Eve, where it gets to be no, you made that decision. Okay, I might have helped you along, but ultimately you knew what was right and wrong, and you still chose what was wrong. So you cannot blame me for that. And that's the devil. But what I found interesting about that concept is that there was a time where Zeus was the king of the gods, right? He was the highest on the pantheon. Jupiter, Zeus, Marduk, whatever old name he had, he was the king of the gods. Well, as Brian rightly said, is that where are the temples to Zeus? Where's the Zeus worshippers now? They're gone. They always say the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he did not exist. So now how the devil rules is through deception. Now, there might be an elite group of people, like everyone talks about how the elites clearly seem like they worship him. But it's kind of like an open secret, right? It's not. It's kind of wink, wink. Yeah, he might still be
esoteric.
Around. Yeah. So, but it seems like that if we were before the times where Jesus proclaimed all authority on heaven and earth and took at the right hand of the Father and is reigning, then he would have reigned openly. The devil would be reigning openly like he used to, having a place like Pergamum where he literally has a throne. He's worshipped as the head god. But now it's you see statues to Neptune, Prometheus. You see all these Greek and Roman gods, but people don't think about them being idols anymore. You see Zeus, you see Neptune, it's more like, oh yeah, this is a cultural thing. This is just mythos. This is
Yeah, it's like it's not that big a deal.
but it makes sense in this idea that yes, he is free to deceive, but he can't really reveal himself truly, because if he did, people know.
Everybody would say no.
well, I think what I first started to do when I first started to get on like TikTok, I thought, you know what, I might not be able to convince everyone the devil's real, but what I can do is I can convince you that these people who run this place, who make the records, who make the movies, who make the laws, make all the money, I can show you they believe it.
Yeah.
Right?
Amen.
So
I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter what you believe, what you think. What matters is the people in control, what they think and what they believe, because they're going to push their narrative every time.
Right. So if it was a different time, they wouldn't have to hide it.
No,
but they do have to hide it. So maybe it does seem like it does make more sense that this is how the devil gathers an army, because it's all through deception. It's not through openly saying, let's go do this thing. It was never gonna be like that. Again, like you have to understand like that people do underestimate our adversary. He is not stupid. He's way smarter than us. And the only way that we could defeat him is through Christ, who's already guaranteed the victory. But outside of that, yeah, we would definitely lose. We're not.
He's a super being.
Yeah, he is. He's
a super being.
He's one of God's greatest creations, and obviously he's super wise. Even though he's more than that. He's obviously super evil.
And it's funny because when you say the JT, like the idea of Lord of the Rings, there's a line in Lord of the Rings, and for those who have seen it, and it's the beginning line, and it's like rumors of shadow in the east, a nameless fear, and it's like, bro, that line in the opening part of Lord of the Rings, I remember it so well, and it's literally like telling you exactly how Satan has resurrected. It's like Sauron was defeated, but there's these rumors that maybe he might be coming back somehow.
There's something off. There's something. All the people all the elves, the wizards, they know something's off, but they can't quite put their finger on it.
Can't quite pin it down, but like they're seeing the evidence, and then it's like dark creatures start appearing again, and you're like, where are these dark things coming from? And you realize, oh crap, he's got a freaking tower. He's got an eyeball. He's resurrecting himself. Like that's literally what we're dealing with right now. Like Satan is literally in 1776. The rumors of the nameless fear, the shadow in the east, started appearing, and people were like, "Huh, what's that?" And then we saw the Statue of Liberty, and we saw the other things, and we saw these little symbols starting to pop up. And society just kind of brushed it off like, yeah, but we're still having a good life. It's a little, there's some people doing some evil stuff over here and there. But now, guess what? The evil is so wicked, you got to be concerned to leave your car unlocked at night everywhere you go. Okay. Yeah. And it's just so wicked that you're like, bro, the wickedness, Satan has been released. Let me tell you what. And it's been, and if you look at old video footage of people from like the 1940s or before then, when they were like just 1800s, you'll see that everybody's wearing top hats and they're all nice and everything's perfect. And dude, and it's all beautiful. And there's no homeless, there's no destruction. You're like, what is this weird utopian world they're walking out of? And there's like electricity and you're just like, how come this is not anything like it seems utopia-ish?
They look like tourists, is what. Yeah,
it looks so uncanny and so unnatural because it's so not like the reality that we're seeing today. Because the reality we live in today has been let out by Satan, and that nameless fear has grown powerful and more powerful, and society has gone down and down and down and down and down. Over and over and over because and now there's freaking, imagine if there's freaking our music videos coming out where they're literally slap dancing on the devil. Okay, bro, like imagine them trying to release that music video like 50 years ago. Even 50 years ago, people would be like, heck no, what is this? But the little subtleties of Satan letting it drop in his little seeds is making it. We're to the point now that if, like, let's say Satan showed up in a physical form, like, and was like, actually like bat wings and all, right? Like in this evil looking for, because he probably doesn't look like that, but even if he looked super evil, okay, and like covered in horns and crystals or whatever, there will be our society there would be a massive movement of be like, yeah, protect that guy, he's cool, and like we would have like a whole massive society that would be like, yeah, I'm with Satan shirts and stuff. You would see like this wouldn't even be a question. He would be making music videos and people would be like, bro, did you see that part where Satan showed up in so-and-so's music video? Oh, dude, it was so cool. Like, whoa. And like, dude, people are so ignorant and so deceived. This is how it would be in our society now, because Satan literally conditioned slowly through little influences a perfect scenario, a storm, to bring himself into authority, into power, and to take advantage of our people. And that's what's happening today. You're seeing it.
What does it say in the end times? You know, it says that, well, how did they word
good
that?
Will be bad and bad will be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you know, the funny thing about that verse too is like that. So that comes from Timothy when it talks about how people will be lovers of money, they'll be unrepentant, they'll be disobedient to their parents and all that. Paul tells Timothy to have nothing to do with those people. So he's saying like that this is going to happen in the end times, and then he tells Timothy to have nothing to do with those people. He's telling Timothy that is because they're living in the end times, not because it's a future prophecy, but because what he's saying, like this is what was supposed to happen in this certain time. But yeah, I love that idea of like that in the Lord of the Rings. Yeah, if you watch the first movie, it's like that. Yeah, the narration saying like that the history became myth and myth became legend, and things that should have been remembered were forgotten. But you could imagine if you had 1,000 years of peace, like the people would not have known what it was like to experience that kind of thing.
Or to cast out demons, which is why people don't even know how to do it or how it works.
Well, but if you think about it, so in the same scenario that you have that when the devil is released, he's not able to really just come out and dominate because the world has obviously been changed since he's been let out. So what is he?
It's like Voldemort's return too. Voldemort in Harry Potter, he comes back a weak little sapling on the back of some dude's head, and he's weak.
Rebuild.
Bro, it's the same story.
But the enemy is gathering strength. So the enemy starts out gathering together his old army or gathering a new army. And so by the time he is revealed, it's kind of too late, you know, for people to be able to resist it because again, he's not stupid. So he's not going to come out in some weakened state where he has no supporters. He's going to slowly build things behind the scenes. So it makes perfect sense. So then what a lot of people believe in this community, it's sort of funny. It seems like our history starts around 1776.
Yep. And everybody
I mean,
thinks
I know
now.
America, obviously, again, like I know why it does, because that's when the Declaration of Independence was signed. But you also have the founding of the Illuminati. Places like San Francisco were discovered in 1776. Kind of a lot of weird stuff. But if you've done any kind of research in kind of the old world research, the 19th century, the 1800s, is the most crazy time you could ever imagine. Everything is being invented, built, burned down. Inventions
destroyed, wiped out,
becoming obsolete almost immediately. You have wars in America, then you have a war in France, then you
wars
have
are human sacrifice rituals. By the way,
you have all kinds of just civil wars, revolutions, and then all these towns in America that are literally the biggest cities in America. I guarantee you, if you look up your town, whatever city it might be, type in Great Fire of ... and there was at least one, likely way more than that. So all these cities that are supposedly like 150 years old, they all burned down more than one time, and then they were rebuilt. So it kind of seems like that's where it makes sense to us that there was a shift, right? There was a shift in the narrative at that point, and this is really when our history starts. And then it's funny because me and Brian were just talking about on one of the JT's mixtape we did. We were talking about could the devil be appearing as a man? And that's kind of what you see in that series, The Rings of Power, that this devil character is appearing as whatever people would accept him as to be. So then we talk about shows like Lucifer, and then you have like the movie Devil's Advocate. And there's this one speech where he's finally revealed to Keanu Reeves that Al Pacino, he is Satan.
I love that scene.
Yeah, and he's saying that, can anyone deny that the 20th century is mine? All of it. He's like, I'm peaking here. And I started to think about that. So you imagine if you really think about it. Let's just say
That was literally Satan speaking through that actor in that moment in real life.
Humorous here. Let's just say he did get let out in around 1776, where you have Statue of Liberty, the broken chain, all the imagery, the Apollo imagery. What you have is, from my perspective, is that the 1800s is the best of times, is the worst of times. It's the craziest time. It's like everything seems like it honestly just sounds like a bunch of lies. But by the 20th century, those lies have been ingrained into our history. And so that's the time where there's separation between what our true history was and what the history the devil wants you to know. So by the time he's given that speech to Keanu Reeves, is the late 20th century, he's saying, this is mine now. Everyone believes all the stuff we've been taught now. And now my agenda is going to go forward. And I thought, dang, that actually seems like very plausible. That these robber barons in the early 20th century, they started the public schools and then were taught a certain way about history.
Mind you, school that was taught to you was called grammar school, which, by the way, that's what they created. Grammar is the root word for witchcraft, grimoire. Okay, so you were taught grimoire school, which literally means witchcraft school. It's the same root as program. To be programmed means pro witchcraft. Pro witchcraft, and craft means to craft, control, to change. So grammar school means control, can change, program. It's grimoire. It's witchcraft school, and everybody was going to grammar school to be programmed to believe a narrative that was brainwashing them into this belief and this system of destruction. Sorry. Anyways, I don't continue. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, but yeah.
I thought he was going to mention that Al Pacino part where where Keanu Reeves tells him, he says, "Dad, why go through all this trouble? You're destined to lose." And he says, consider the source, son.
Well, right.
That's how he thinks.
Well, that's in the exact same way that in that show Rings of Power, Al Pacino says that, hey, I told you it's okay to lose, but you wouldn't do it. So he fell to the sin of pride.
Yeah. That
he was willing to do what he should not have done because he did not want to lose. So it was the exact same way that he was manipulating, but he did let him actually, but it was ultimately Keanu Reeves who committed the sin by doing the things that he went against what his conscience told him he should do. But yeah, I thought that that kind of thought has not been able to get out of my mind. That it makes sense to me that if the devil can appear as an angel of light, he could appear as a man. And he could kind of be manipulating the things in the way that he wants it to be. But again, he cannot fully reveal himself to all of us. Otherwise, we'll be aware of the trick.
Right.
But it does make sense that I said, I'm sure that in your podcast, you thought, dang, it's really amazing how connected this stuff is, how deep this rabbit hole is, how many lies we've been told about everything that we thought we knew to be true. And why would it be like this? Why would it be like this unless there was some kind of agenda at the end of this? I think that's the thing that we do kind of wonder. And then you get into the Balfour Declaration and the modern state of Israel. And then that's where I think that it makes sense why this lie is so pervasive, is there is an agenda based on this part of the Middle East that Christians now support whatever happens there. They turn a blind eye to all kinds of wickedness. Even Brian and I were just talking about today that dispensationalists, the modern church of evangelicals, will say, oh, you have to support Israel because God's still got this plan for these certain people. Meanwhile, I was just reading a story to Brian today, is that there was this Palestinian city that was 100% Christians, that Israelis were going down and burning this place down. They were killing Christians in Palestine. But in our minds, we've been taught, oh, well, gosh, there are just Muslims there, and they're the bad ones, not the Jews. The Jews are good. The Jews are God's chosen people. It feels like there's some agenda here that is about whatever's happening there, that we our cognitive dissonance just kicks in. We don't look at it. We just say, "Oh, the Bible says support that." Support what? Well, I don't want to know what I'm supporting. I just want to know that when God comes back, it'll all be made right. So therefore, I can allow evil to happen, evil to triumph, because eventually I'm getting my one-way ticket out of here on the rapture, and I'll just be gone.
I ain't gonna be here. Just let the world turn to shit.
Yeah,
That's something that aggravates the hell out of me with modern Christians. I tell them, it's like, what I've read and studied, I was raised to believe in a rapture. But when I actually got to reading for myself and studying for myself, I don't see no rapture there. Yeah, the word, harpatio is there. That's at the end, man. That's at the very end. You get your light body or your eternal body. I believe that's what that's talking about, because time and time again, it talks about you will endure all these tribulations. And like you had mentioned in Matthew, pray it's not in the winter, and the nursing mothers have to flee to the mountains. I mean, it says we're going to be here, but all these people that has this, tribulation, rapture thing going on in their head, they're like, I ain't gonna be here for it. God's in control. I'll just sit back. And I tell people, no, man, it says that he made you in his image. You are basically, he's the king. Heaven's a monarch. He's the king. You are the lords ruling over his realm, and you represent the king. So if you're a shitty lord, you overtax your people, you torture them, rape the women, and do all this stuff. Yeah, you have the free will choice to do that. But when you do that, you reflect negatively on the king, and people see you and say, well, that lord's shitty. So that means he's an employee of the king. So that means the king is shitty. I want nothing to do with that shitty king.
Yeah. You're 100% right. I mean, that's what people see. I think that's what worldly people would see as Christians who are cheering on potentially World War III. They would say, you guys are a death cult.
Yep. I watched a dude that literally said that.
Yeah, you guys want the end of the world to happen. And if you really think about it, I've wrestled with this idea as if the rapture has ever been taught correctly at all. If live people were ever taken up to heaven, like I said, if it was, I believe that was a past event. But what we as Christians are promised is a resurrection, right? A resurrection of the dead. So if you're in Christ, you'll be resurrected and you'll live forever. Okay. So let's just say that that's where everyone's hope was, that you might live 70, 80 years in this place. Well, maybe you might try to make it better if you know you're going to be here for a while, right? Maybe you wouldn't cheer on World War III if you knew you were going to be here for a while. So maybe that would be good incentive for the devil to lie about how that Christians think, well, God said it was going to be this way, so I'm just going to let it just happen like this. Instead of just being better, like trying to make it better and trying to resist evil. Instead of saying, oh, it's going to happen anyway, so what am I going to do about it?
Dude, you know what it does
very selfish to think that I'm not going to have to deal with the consequences of all this crap.
Yeah, they all believe that the world's going to come to an end and they're just going to get pulled out and raptured out. Congratulations. Bro, you know what it says in the Bible? It says cowards don't go to heaven. You're a freaking coward if that's what you're thinking. And you're like, well, I guess I just won't stand in. I won't do anything about the situation. I won't say nothing because, the world's got to go to crap anyways. I mean, that's what it says in Revelation. Coward. It says you don't go to heaven.
Come quick, Lord. I'll speed up the timeline if I have to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's cowardice. And it's like, bro, I hope the Lord don't come quick for your sake if you think that, because guess what? You ain't going, coward.
Well,
that's what it says.
Well, I remember when I was getting really upset about that because I was hearing a couple of people talking about that. Oh yeah, they were wishing on the end times, and they were also talking about how don't worry, telling their followers don't worry about it because we'll be gone. I really was pressed on me about how you have a couple stories in the Bible. You have John and James trying to call down fire from heaven, or they want to. Some town obviously does not accept them. And then so they go to Jesus. Jesus, do you want us to call down fire from heaven? And then Jesus says, you know not what spirit of you speak. You really don't know what you're talking about. Like you don't really want that. You have no idea if you're calling down judgment on people. Because it is that kind of idea of like, judge not lest you be judged. Because it's not in the way that's calling out a sin as judging someone. It's like if you did something that's wrong, like that's not judgment. Judgment is like saying, just like in the story of like the woman who was going to be stoned, like he who's without sin cast the first stone. You want to be merciful. You want to give people grace. You don't want to call down judgment from God. So what he was saying is like that you don't want that, because eventually if you want judgment here, likely it's going to be turned on you. Like you're going to be judged.
So it says, woe to those who seek the day of the Lord.
So
woe
then
to you.
Yeah. So then you think about the story of Abraham. And so he goes into Sodom, right? He's told by the Lord that these angels are going to come down and destroy the city. And Abraham is grieved by that idea. Like, what if, God, there's 50 righteous men there? Are you going to judge this place? And he's like, no. But there's 40, there's 30, there's 20, there's 10. And God's like, if there's 10 righteous men, I will not destroy this place. Of course, there was not 10 righteous men there. But it's like, it's kind of like that attitude, that difference is like, so Abraham was a righteous man. That city must have been awful. Yeah, obviously Lot's there. And he's grieved about how terrible it is.
All the men wanted to rape the angels when they got there.
it was a pretty bad place. But Abraham still did not want God to destroy it. I do feel like that's kind of like if he's like the forefather of our faith. I mean, I think he's kind of a great example for us to say that if you look around the world and you say, I can't wait till God just rains fire down on this place.
Just burn it all down.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like that. Be careful what you wish for. Right. Because it's like, what if God sees your heart in that kind of same way that you want to give grace to people. You want extra grace for people. You want to give people more chances because you and I and Brian, we all need more chances.
Dude, we're all so screwed up. That's what I tell people all the time. I'm a good old boy, and I'm rough around the edges, man. And I tell people, Jesus said, remove the log from your own eye before you ever try to remove a speck from another. And I said, so a good old boy, East Tennessee language, that means mind your own damn business, people.
Yeah.
We're so screwed up. You should have a mirror in front of your face, seeing how screwed up and ugly you are, and be trying to fix that. You don't have time to focus on and judge somebody else, man. Those who are forgiven much, forgive much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it's like the wages of sin is all the same, right? So we know that but we know that again, like the closer you get with Jesus, the more you realize, I hope he's not as judgmental as, I hope he's more great. I hope he gives more grace to everyone. I hope more people are in heaven than I ever imagined there are. Yes. I want to be wrong on that side of it. Not on the side there's less. Like, oh my gosh, that person didn't get in. Because I think that's the attitude is that because we all know that if we got what we deserved, it would not be good. Amen. So therefore, we don't want this world to get what it deserves. So with that different mindset, maybe if you didn't think there was a get out of jail free card called the rapture, then maybe you would be here trying to do better. Like you said, be your God, your king's earthly representative, and trying to do what you would think that Jesus would be trying to do. He didn't come to the world to condemn it; he came to save it. But then he came in judgment. So that's kind of like what's going to happen again. Is like so we're here not to condemn this place, but to save it, because one day again it will be judged by fire.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Well, boys, I ain't gonna keep you all day, man, but I could talk to you guys all day. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and you give me a lot of new nuggets to contemplate on. That's for sure.
I'll tell you one more thing. If you go to demonracers.com, Ancient Angels, we've been talking about this on the Ancient Angels podcast. I haven't made thumbnails for them yet. I should. I'm going to. I'll do it. But we talk about each one of these kind of subjects that kind of relate from Nephilim kind of into short season in a weird way. And we discuss a lot of topics, like there's like the baby boomers or the Cabbage Patch Kids that just showed up out of nowhere, and like orphan trains that we didn't even talk about. But you should go there if you guys are interested. Watch it on Demon Racer's channel. Like, bro, there's so much that we talk about that kind of opens your mind to like what's been going on and how our narrative is being manipulated and changed. So much evidence, so much stuff. Eventually we're going to make a movie and try to put as much in it as we can, but it might end up being like a 10-hour movie. Like, I don't even know, man.
Mm-hmm. It's a bit overwhelming at some points.
You have to make that it's like a mini series.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, before we leave, I give everybody the opportunity to just let everybody know where they can find your work, websites, anything you want to plug if they want to check out.
Well, yeah, if you want to follow me, of course, like I said, I got my hat on it. JT follows JC. You can pretty much find me on pretty much everything. I do most of my stuff on YouTube, but obviously I have the socials. That's where I started on TikToks, but I have Facebook, Instagram. If you type in JT follows JC, you'll find me on X. You'll find me on Apple and Spotify. I got a podcast with Brian called JT's Mixtape. We do that once a week, and we talk about everything, not just little season stuff. We talk about demons, aliens, the elites being satanic pedos and all that kind of stuff. We do a little bit of everything, but yeah, this was a lot of fun, man. I hope to do it again sometime.
Oh, for sure.
Yep.
100%.
Yep. And everybody,
Brian?
you can find me at demonracers.com. I cast out demons and pray for people on there, or it's got my social media. Everything for me is just Demon Erasers. And on YouTube, me and JT do another podcast weekly where pretty much, I think we do a live pretty much every Saturday. It's been consistent. That we do a live talking about, all kinds of Nephilim-esque history and little season kind of ish stuff. And then, Demon Racers TikTok. My TikTok's pretty big. That's about it. YouTube, X, kind of. Instagram, all of the above.
All the things.
And Ancient Angels. We have a movie, ancientangels.com, which I found out will be getting on Amazon Prime finally. Found out that it was because it was a series that I cut it into a series, and they basically said, no, it's got to be a single movie. So that'll be a very long movie, but it'll be on Amazon Prime shortly too as well.
Nice.
Heck yeah.
Well, guys, if you enjoyed this conversation, as you can see, these guys, it's amazing how similar that we are. I've always said to myself that I was a generalist. I just like looking at comparative mythology, the history, seeing where everything connects and connecting the dots. And as you've seen, these gentlemen have done that. I applaud you guys. You are biblically referenced. You go through the history and connect the dots with the scripture. And that's something that I try to do myself. So I commend you guys for all your hard work, because a lot of people don't realize the time and energy and effort it takes to dig through this stuff and connect these dots. So I applaud you guys for it. But guys, be sure to check out their website. I'll be sure to try to have their links and stuff down in the description, make it easy for you, make it an easy one-click solution for you. But until next time, guys, just remember the difference between the known and the unknown is the journey. So good journey, guys.